Okay. Okay. So everybody this is just kind of more of a discussion than anything else. And I don't know, after the last one, it was really cool and had lots of ideas and stuff from it. So this time I kind of wanted just to talk about practicing with a plan and what that looks like and why we should do it. And this summer, I really started to try to I should say I've always practiced with a plan. I think for me this summer, it started to look more like the fact that when I noticed a shift in my roping, when I would make a conscious effort, once I stepped foot in that arena, I would let everything else go, right? I think that as much of it is being present where your feet are as is having a plan when you sit in the practice pen. And so like kind of my first question is to the group, you guys can either unmute yourself and talk or put in the chat, is what do you use a practice plan currently? And if you do, what that looks like. So I will share first what that looks like for me currently. I don't write it down, and I should, but in my life, I have to write everything else down that I do. I don't have, like when it comes to roping, like that is on the forefront of my brain 100% of the time. So if it has anything else to do, I have to write it down in there. I have 20 lists in this notebook here, right? So I should probably write it down, probably for progress, because I think that's how the main purpose of writing it down. But I always have a clear, concise plan when I step into the practice. It always changes. Like for example, today I really wanted to work on my Hurley horse of taking his front end up and moving his feet faster. And I got on him and roped the sled, and he was just going 100 miles an hour. So it had to completely change. And I think that was okay. And then I always, before I leave the practice pen, I will come up, or by the time I am done putting my horses away and done with that process, hopefully have a practice, what I'm going to work on between now and the next time I get to practice, and what I'm going to work on in the next practice. So that's kind of what it looks like for me. So I'm going to just go around my screen, since you guys are all this way, and we'll start at the top. And if you guys just want to kind of share, if you guys have a practice plan, what that kind of looks like. And so we'll start with Gina, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Mine, I guess, would start with my, pretty much my calendar in a way, is I kind of look at what we have available and what our time schedule is. And then I always try to schedule in a couple to ride out, like out of the arenas. And it kind of sounds weird, but I kind of try to get those in first and see, okay, this would be a good day to ride out, and this would be a good day. And then now what's left to fill in to like work on, like say if we're just going to break away with my daughter or something like that, I'll figure out her schedule, and then, okay, we have time afterwards to rope this evening. Or maybe we don't have as much time as normal, so then maybe we'll do some drills on the dummy or something. But I kind of work it off of, I start there. And then I guess I also start on what the horse needs. You know, whether it needs a lot of, I guess I just start with our issues too, and kind of work backwards from there and decide what we need to work on, and then we move forward, I guess. And I start with the dummy, and then we move into the alleyway, and then we move into the rope and box is kind of, I guess, how I go different levels, if that kind of makes sense.
Well, and I think that's a good point that you're saying is it's not willy-nilly what you practice that week, right? It's our stemming from what we talked about, like the big vision, the plan, the big plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what your goals are, or, you know, as well, like, I guess, say for me, getting ready for Vegas, it was more keeping in tune than really changing anything, because I didn't want to change anything right before, we went. So, but maybe this spring I might try to change it up a tick, for myself. And then on my daughter's side, kind of just seeing where she's at and strategizing from there.
Right. That's a good point. Stacey, do you use a practice plan currently, or what does that look like for you?
Did you just say my name?
Yes, I did.
Well, I was working on trying to get unmuted, so I missed part of that. But I am assuming I'm unmuted now.
Yes, you're unmuted now. You just got unmuted.
Okay, so yeah, I always have a practice plan. I always have a plan and thinking of something that I'm going to do. The last 3 years I've spent a lot of time with a new horse, so a lot of it has been working on that new horse, and then realizing where my weaknesses are, or his weaknesses are, as a breakaway horse. He doesn't have very quick feet, he doesn't rate as hard or want to stop as hard or as quickly as other horses. So I've spent a lot of time riding with other people, doing different drills. And so I've spent a great deal of time trying to do all of those things. And those are all incorporated into my plan, whether it be practice or riding. So I kind of think of them as together if I'm just exercising versus actually roping the dummy on him or live cattle. So that's been kind of a big piece. So still working on that, because he's only physically capable of moving his feet so fast. But and then myself, practice plan is, I've had one for years, but most recently, I always have something that I want to work on, and I usually spend from the last time, or the last calf I've roped, or the last loop I've thrown, to the next time I do it, thinking exactly about what I want to do, envisioning that. I verbalize my practice plan with someone in my practice pen, usually Todd Ferguson, who's always in the practice pen, and he and I he spends a lot of time at the barn, so I get to spend a lot of time verbalizing those things and bouncing ideas off of him as well, and vice versa, and him suggesting things to work on. And then, of course, following through with that is with either videos or eyeballs from other people in the practice pen, so that we can stop and evaluate those things as well. So it's always a plan in motion.
That's a good way to put it. Do you say, or does Todd ask, what are you working on tonight? Or, this, that, what, or whatever, or do you say, I am going to work on, like for me, today it was like, I am going to work on picking Hurley's front end up, or that kind of language? Or do you think that matters?
Yes, I do. And a lot of it is prior to, Todd's usually in the barn when I'm saddling. So we're usually having a conversation about what it's going to be like prior to even getting to the arena. So Todd and I are usually on the same page that direction. Right. So I have someone to, discuss with, and we've talked about, what my horse needs to do or what I need to do different. And so, yes, that is a lot of times I verbalize that with him, or he'll even make a suggestion, say, if I say I'm going to plan on doing this, there's a lot of times where he'll say, I think that's a great idea, but you might also think about this. Or do you think this is more important? So I can adjust that based on that input as well.
That's great, yeah. Patty, should I unmute you? Let me unmute you here. I think you're unmuted.
Okay. So as far as writing something down, or?
Yeah, do you write something down before you go, or do you just think about
No.
it, or how does that look for you?
no, my piles of paper, I don't need more piles of paper because I would take 30 minutes finding the plan. I mean, basically, it's been to try to find time to practice. But, you know, and I'm sitting here thinking about, normally I don't plan it all out, but just like I had a new horse and he wanted to break in the right lead. I mean, this is healing. I mean, y'all have to transfer me over here, but
That's okay.
he was wanting to break in the right lead. So, you know, you try this, cock him this way or whatever. But, you know, like you say, there was an experienced guy there that I was roping with, and he's just like, well, just, you know, put your weight in that left stirrup when you leave. That's all you got to do, you know. And I'm like, I mean, I'd never tried that, and it works. I mean, he knew what he was talking about. But anyway, things like that. And you know, I would try to work on position. I guess I do work on my faults and try to do things better. And Glenn and I probably talk about them, but I never think about it as actually having this plan, you know what I'm saying? And then,
It's putting a term to something that we've already done is how
yeah,
right, is what I think of it as.
yeah. And I sort of, I have trouble thinking about stuff and roping at the same time. I know that's goofy, but it's just like I'll be thinking about position and then I'm like, did I even swing my rope? Or I'll swing real slow when I'm thinking about something else. And so I've been trying, you know, to just try to swing faster to get some momentum so I could then look at and try to, you know, position and different things like that. So I guess I really do work on things, but as far as like you did where you said you were going to score so many and rope so many, I never do that. I mean, if I think my horse is running through me or something, I'll just score then. I mean, I don't plan scoring out. I do it as needed, I guess, is what I would say.
Right.
And then I have two opposite horses. One, he's real short and he wants to back out, and the other one's free. And so, you know, I have to really think about what I'm doing. And the one horse that's short, my basic plan is to try to keep him a little fresh so he doesn't feel the big swing that's his clue or whatever it is my little cue is that they figure
Right.
out. So sometimes I don't rope the dummy on him much because it just seems he gets shorter and then I don't even get close, you know. So some things like that. And I probably need to work on my left hand a lot. I mean, I can think of several things to be working on now. It's just I haven't done a fancy plan at all ever.
Right. And then I have the other person that's on the call, the 503 phone number. It doesn't have your name. I'll admit it. Hello, whoever you are. I don't recognize the number. Yes. Hello. Do you want to join in? Okay. Just a second. I'm going to do this real quick to see if I can. Are you there? Anyway. Okay. Hello? Oh, I think it's just you, Stacy. I think you're on twice. Okay. And then I don't see Catherine. Are you on here anymore? I'm not sure what happened. What I wanted to share that I've noticed a big thing about difference for myself. I've always had a practice plan, and I remember being in high school, and it was very vivid and very specific that either my mom or my dad, whoever we were roping with, and I remember it more like my senior year in high school, that the fact that Dad would always say, well, when you get to college, you're going to have to, because I went to WSU, we didn't really have a coach, or I wasn't going to a big college where that was going to be emphasized. so that's when I think we started talking a lot about these things, so that I would have a plan and be able to still rope it in the practice pen at college. But what I was going to say is I've noticed a big difference when a year and a half, whenever I started driving to go practice 75 miles each way. And I think, so 75 miles down, right? So an hour I'd have to think about what I'm going to rope. And that was fine. And I think that was really good because I had gotten in a really, really bad habit of being too busy in my day-to-day stuff. When I have to walk on the hill to go practice, I noticed when I was roping at my own arena that I still was all caught up in my head on everything else, that I wasn't actually fully participating in the practice. And then what I found to be really helpful is when I drove an hour home from Brad's or Seth's house, I really got to form a really decisive plan of what I was going to do next time. And that's when this whole practicing with a plan thing really kind of came to life. And I think for me, I'm really trying to, anybody that like at the clinics or the lessons, to really give them things to do, kind of like what Gina was saying, in the fact that, okay, yes, you know, I'm going to write it in my day journal. I posted a blog about this this afternoon, but the fact that, okay, I have my big vision, and then I'm going to work it back to 6 months. Then I'm going to work it back to 3 months, and then I'm going to work it back to basically what. So I sit down every week, either Sunday or Monday, depending on school and work, and I write everything into my calendar, right? And okay, I've already made a plan of which days of the week I'm going to actually rope cattle. Do I get to rope on the sled? Do I X, Y, or Z? And actually writing it down. And I think that's the part that is the most important to write down. So anyway, yeah.
I like that. I like your idea of the thinking before and after. I think with kids too, I've noticed too, is you ask them, what are you going to work on today? What do you want to get out of this? And it puts them in a different state of mind than just doing and reacting. And I think sometimes we get caught up in doing and reacting instead of trying to work on specific things to make us better.
Right. I noticed a difference this summer when I would ask that question, or you would, to those girls that are roping, right? It kind of, I feel like when you, especially with the age that, you know, your daughter is, and those Rios, we want them to be fun, right? But we are trying to set them up for, and those girls want to learn, right? So giving them that idea of what am I going to work on, more so than, yes, catching is good, but like that next thing for them to work on.
Right. Yeah. I think with any age, or just like, I have a hard time sometimes with self-reflecting of the positives and the negatives, not necessarily the negatives, but just rating your practice in general. I've never kind of looked back and rated it. Like I've looked back and said, okay, that horse didn't work with me today, or we need to work on this again, but I've never really kind of thought about rating it. And I think that's a really cool concept.
Right? Like, so today I got done with Hurley, and, you know, I just really wanted to kick him in the belly. Like, the only thing I really wanted to do. But it's, you know, so then I'm like, okay, you know, obviously Charlie had the treats out, and he was a goner, right? Like, his brain was just like over here on the treats, and I got on him, and he was I freed him up, same as I do with Maddie, on the shoulders, and I thought, okay, we're gonna rope the sled. He wouldn't hardly stay behind the sled today. Like, I wanted, like, I don't know, it was almost 55 degrees here today, and he still was being stupid. So, but I think it allowed me to take a moment and walk away, right? Or, you know, I walked around and then came back to it, or, you know, just so we still had something good come out of it. That's so hard, though.
Yes, it is difficult.
It's so hard. So yeah, that, I don't know. That's my thoughts. Stacy, what other thoughts do you have? I might have muted you on both of them. There, you're unmuted now.
Okay. Well, I kind of like the whole thing. You know, even what Patty was saying before, where she couldn't figure out how to, you know, she had a thought process, but what, you know, something else didn't go as planned. My theory is when I go into a practice, if I'm working on something specific, it's not going to make a difference whether I catch or not. If I am doing what it is that I set out to do, and or my horse is doing what I set out for him to do, then I'm considering that a win. And then some aspects, when I sit down and look at it, because I'm more analytical, sometimes I have to take a step back before I can take, or two back before I can take that next step forward. And I've found that sometimes I have to take those steps back, but I like several of the things that you've said in the past as well. Like, if you're not winning, you're learning. And I think that lingo is really important, not only for our own minds, but even when I'm giving lessons, because a lot of the girls want to, or the kids want to, you know, like you said, catch that dummy every single time. But that's not what we were working on, whether it was, you know, whether it be them working on their left hand and keeping their horse in behind the calf, whether it be, or the sled, you know, identifying that the sled slowed down so that they have to, you know, rate their horse off because the horse wasn't rating quick enough. Little things like that. So I really like that idea too. And like you said, making that adjustment in the middle of your practice. You had a plan. Hurley didn't want to, you know, participate on the same page, and so you had to adjust that in the moment to make something successful out of that for him on that particular day. And so sometimes us being flexible is the other key component. And that can be hard for those that are, you know, really stuck on wanting to hold that plan. I've learned that sometimes those plans have to be flexible, even though I like to be more rigid.
Yes, isn't that true? And I think then this kind of goes back to the fact of, so when I rope at my house, I know what the calves are going to do. If I go to Gina's house, I know what the calves are going to do. But then if I go over here and the calves don't do or don't allow me to, your plan has to adjust to where you're practicing, I guess. Maybe also is maybe a good way to put it.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, there have been many times I've shown up at a practice pen and had an idea in mind and then observe what is happening and watch the cattle and realize that what I had planned isn't going to match that setup with that particular set of calves. So having to adjust, or I've also had to learn after all these years, there's sometimes where I have a plan, but if I can't be present in that moment when I get home, and I know I can't be present in that moment, then I choose to do something completely different, whether it be warm up my horse, score a pin on him, walk score, rope the sled. But I know sometimes that it's not going to be beneficial for me to actually practice because I'm not going to be.
Point.
Sometimes that's been my big win for the night, is knowing that I'm not there. So there's no sense in beating my head against the wall and becoming frustrated or developing bad habits. But it's taken a long time to be okay with that as well.
And it's hard, right? I mean,
yeah, it's frustrating.
Frustrating, yeah. Probably that's probably a better word. Yeah. Okay, since I gotta grab this piece.
No, I agree 100%, Stacy. I think that's half of it sometimes is us trying to figure out or like learning how to read your horse or whatever too. And sometimes you just have to do that. And that's big though. I think that's what if you can't do that, then that's when you're either going to burn them out or use them up, or they're not going to work for you. And I'm 100% believer, if your horse doesn't work, then you ain't ever going to work. So sometimes
Exactly.
yeah, you got to work for your horse first and then practice for you second, I think.
Always,
I
right?
agree.
And we only got the horses we got. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
How do you teach that to kids, though? Like, that,
Teach which part?
both of them, either of them.
Which part?
Either of the fact that some days the win is that your horse, that you went back, this thing back, right? To, maybe today isn't even the day to work on live cattle. It's like, we just need to work on the sled, or maybe we need to step back and go to the GTS, or, how do you phrase that in a positive way for kids? And maybe it's not even the kids, it's the parents, that this is the most important part.
Prime example was this last week when I gave a lesson. We started on live cattle, and our intention was to rope some live cattle. And one of the three girls was doing pretty well. The other two were struggling. They're struggling with the horses in the box and becoming very frustrated. So we stopped and changed gears, and we pin roped. And so then we went back to discussing the fact that everything that we've done working on the sled is exactly what we're going to do with pin roping, except now we're adding the live calf that is going to make a choice as to where it's going to go when it wants to, and that you have to learn to be patient. And you have to take what the calf will give you instead of trying to make it happen. And then focusing on all the positives of things slowed down because my calves slowed down, right? And they were able to throw a lot more loops, and things were going at a trot or a lope without the pressure of the box. And kids were able to recognize their left hand. Kids were able to recognize whether or not they were sitting down too soon. All of the things that we talked about as far as them cueing their horse incorrectly or too soon, or cueing the horse to do something that they really didn't intend the horse to do, they were able to recognize as we were pin roping and things slowed down. So we adjusted in the middle of that. And then all three girls left feeling much more confident because they accomplished something, and a light bulb moment came on for most of them that said, oh, I did really well with my left hand here, or I rode my horse and kept my horse in position instead of letting my horse run off to the left, because it's where most of them want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think too, sometimes stopping and asking why, like 2 or 3 times, to the kid, and figure out, okay, well, if they're not catching, if their horse is scratching them or something, and then you can say, well, why is he doing that, or what are you feeling, and then trying to get them to recognize it, I think would be one way.
Absolutely, for sure. A lot of times I'll ask them if they depending on how they miss, if they saw their loop hit, whether it be the sled or the live calf, and because their loop will tell them a lot about their follow through and the angle in which they were swinging the rope. And so by getting them to recognize that, and then explaining why, if you don't let the rope pass your hand and let the tip lead to the calf, we call it pushing your hand through. So I go on and explain all of that and show them exactly how that loop looks, and then make them watch it. And then, like you said, ask them, did you see how that loop landed? And then they will be able to come back and explain to me why it landed the way that it did, and what they maybe did wrong and how they can fix it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay. What other thoughts do you guys have about practicing with a plan?
I think for me, I juggle how to that juggling of I guess preparing the horse for my daughter or making her prepare it. You know, sometimes that's a little bit difficult for me as to when to rein in her a little bit versus me. No, I need to work on it, but then teach her as well. It's kind of a constant juggle for me.
Right. And don't you think it's a day by day thing? Just like the other day we were talking, when we did the video about the holding of the reins.
Yes.
And I think because if you and I can talk about it, and then she says this over here, and then it's not even like you're telling her, it's just kind of came up in the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I think all kids, if it'll stick better in her brain than if it's something like that.
Right. If it's brought up in conversation, then pointing out if she's doing something wrong.
Right. That's how we all function.
Right.
Yes. We all function better that way. But that's hard, right? And as she gets strong enough, or any kid gets strong enough, like, are they physically strong enough or coordinated enough to cue their horse and work their horse and rope? I don't know. That's hard.
Yeah. Yes. It's hard where they need the reps and the repetition in, but yeah, sometimes the horse doesn't. So how do you juggle both that? Or, that's kind of, I guess, my struggle on the practice sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's why it goes back to the sled. It just is so powerful. And maybe we don't use it enough in general so that they can have the reps, or using it more diverse. I don't know.
Yes. No, that's very true. I think every time I go away from it, I always ask myself, why did I stop? I need to use this more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then having the right cattle, right? If the horse isn't running its guts out, then it's okay if they make a few more runs versus ones that run hard. I think that's a huge key for beginners too. That'll takes your horse and makes them work for longer periods of time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Stacey or Patty?
Well, I use the sled regularly. I mean, not only with my lesson kids, but we rope the sled regularly. And even if I'm riding, I will set the sled up in the middle of the arena and just lope circles around it, and then have my horse loped up to it and rate off and stop in position and then rope it. So that we're doing all kinds of, like your drills you were doing the other day, and moving your horse laterally and those kind of things, just because my horse didn't have any rate when I first got him. So that is a constant reminder to break down and rate off. And the sled is, I firmly believe that I have a number of kids that are very green that come out and take lessons. And until they can rope the sled 20 times in a row, then we don't move forward, because there are so many variables to the sled. So we do a lot of different things with the sled. And instead of just going straight at the same speed, making them really move their hand or move their horse into position, use their left hand, and identify, because as well as I do, there's a lot of times where you get out there and you rope a calf, and those calves back into you because they hear you coming, and we don't react near quick enough, but the kids don't react at all. Mm-hmm. So just those little pieces to the puzzle too. The sled is, I've become much more fond of roping the sled, and get a lot of value out of that. as well as, you know, the live cattle. I've got a pen of calves right now that we have a couple really slower ones, some nice medium ones, and then a couple that run a little harder. So there's a little bit of a variation, and it's nice to be able to do that as well. One of the other reasons I use the sled so much for my lessons too is that my indoor arena is only 120 feet long. So it happens really fast for kids when they first come, because it's I mean, they blink and they miss it, right?
Yeah.
So
that's
you
short.
get 4 or 5 swings, and then you better be throwing it, because you're at the end of the arena and cattle are stopping. So that's one of the other pieces that dictates for me, especially in the wintertime with my lesson kids, that the reason that we rope the sled, because I have a lot of kids that don't have horsepower enough to be able to come across in my little arena and catch up to the calf, not even just with their, you know, physically, not talk about their rope, just them physically catching up. So that too makes a difference.
Yes.
That's what we do. I mean, that's mainly what I practice on is a sled, because we don't, I mean, we have a hard pan arena, and there's not very many days you can actually physically rope right now. And my sled driver, my husband, he's driving it. I mean, he's going pretty good, but I mean, you know, there's a worry with me that he might hit the fence or something. I mean, because he's recovering from his stroke. But so I'm just like, you know, I'll just like, you know, but just, you know, trying to get him to do different things. Like it's hard because explaining to him, like, you know, oh, my horse is a little chargy. So, I mean, at least in the heading position, you can just have him back off, and then if he goes by, and then zoom by it. But then he doesn't get that. I mean, when I tell him do something, you know, it's like, what, you know, and he might, I mean, he's getting a little better to getting it across. But just like the other night, I told him, I said, just leave the sled in the arena, because usually we take it out because our cows are in there and the bull tries to breed it, tears it up, you know. And I was telling him, just leave it in the arena. And I mean, he told me I'd have to shut the gate, and he thought I was trying to turn a horse out in there. I mean, I'm just like, no, just, you know. So the things you need to practice on, I mean, for him to, like, you know, if a horse, I mean, like if I'm pulling the sled, if your horse is chargy or something, I'm going to mess with you and back off and, you know, do the things, you know,
Do the things
help.
that need to be done to help.
Right. But he doesn't really get that. But I mean, he's, you know, and like speeding up in the corner, I'll tell him speed up in the corner, because with that sled, it bogs down over there, you know. And but he doesn't get all that, you know. And I'll just say, pretend like you're on a horse and make that cow hop, you know. And but we're getting better. I mean, so it's just that does help. And I've got my calf sled. I'm going to get that thing out here now pretty soon.
That's awesome.
Patty, have you ever gone ahead and looked on YouTube and looked for different videos? Because I'm sure that there are different videos that would work on different aspects of what you're trying to do, that you could show your husband and he could visually see how they're pulling the sled, and maybe that might help give him the vision of what you're looking for him to do for you.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because, you know, if he knows what to do and different things, but if you try to tell him, he doesn't get it. But that's a good idea, you know, tell him.
Yeah,
maybe
then
if it's the whatever, the rate drill, or if you just name those drills, it should help. That's a good idea.
It would just give him a visual for sure. That way he could, you know, you guys could even watch the videos together and discuss why you want it to be done, and why you need him to do those things, and he can see that, and then it might be the perfect thing to translate into your practice pen.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It would really, be good and it's a good therapy for him in general. Don't tell him.
For sure.
Helping him with his therapy.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's getting better. I mean, you know, I've been putting these lists, you know, and now the lists aren't name a fruit. It's like name saddle makers, name bit makers, where have we roped
Awesome.
before, things like that. So he's doing a lot better. It's just
Good.
slow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So before we wrap up, I got a question for you guys. Because I talked about this. So do you think confidence is a feeling, or is it a way you act? And somebody told me, and okay, Stacey, you're the English teacher, so you can help me that I think confidence is a feeling, because or I perceive confidence as a feeling, but then somebody said that the people that say the word that confidence is, oh, what is it? Something you do, not something that you feel. So.
Well, you are talking to a thinker, so as far as a thinker goes, right?
Right.
I think it has. Honestly, I think it has a lot to do with both. I think it can. I mean, to a degree, it's a feeling, but also, I think it has a lot to do with how you. I always well, let's put it this way. I always tell my kids, when you go to a competition, all right, you walk into the arena with the confidence that you know that you're there, and you believe that you're going to do well, and you want to know who's going to win second.
So therefore, that's a feeling and the
to
way
me,
you act.
And it's a mindset. It's a mindset. And to me, there's a big difference between being confident and being cocky.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So, and that's because that's, when you're discussing with the kids, I don't want them to take it to the extent where they become cocky, right? But I do want them to walk in with a confidence.
Knowing they've put the work in.
Mm-hmm. That they've prepared, and a long time ago, my dad used to have a belief statement, and he made a card, like a credit card, and he laminated it, and we always carried it around, and it said, I believe. And a lot, I believe in my preparation, I believe in my team, I believe in, that we are going to win. And a lot of it was prepped for my sports in high school, but you take that into any aspect, right? So you practice to prepare, right? And if you have planned that preparation, then you should have the confidence to be able to execute that.
I think confidence is kind of like, Jennifer, how is there 4 or 5 different ways you can learn anything? Is that right? 5?
5.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So say that 5. So I kind of believe you need to do all of those to believe and have confidence in yourself. So if
all those 5 different ways.
Yes, you tell yourself, you look yourself in the mirror, you physically do things to prove to yourself in the practice pen that you can do it, and then I think that's when you hit on all 5 of those points and you do that repetitiously, then you are going to believe and have confidence in yourself to take it into other places.
Good way to put it.
I'm going to say on mine, it has a lot to do with what I'm writing, how confident I am when I walk in there, I mean, if you're, depending on, I don't know, my horse is squirrely sometimes, I guess, but, if he's not jumping at his own poop pile or something, I have a little more confidence. But a lot of it depends on the horse to me.
Yes, I think it's huge. I had that thought last night when I got on my mare. And anyway, yeah, you can get on them and feel, right? Whether or not that they're gonna think that they're in this game with you or not in it with you, right?
Right. And I think along with that, I mean, I think about Joe Beaver at the finals. If it ain't working, get on something else. I'm slow to change. I'm slow to give in. Like you say, you ride what you have. But at some point, you need to be smart enough to say, look, this horse is good in the practice pen, but he's got to me a few times in competition, or he spooked at a banner or whatever. You have to be willing to change if it's not working, or you're just losing time, to me. I need to listen to myself say these things, but
That's why we're doing this.
yeah.
For sure.
It's the hardest part. You can definitely give the advice and it sounds great, but following your own advice can be the most difficult part of the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that just kind of helps. I don't know. I had this discussion with
Okay,
somebody
so
yesterday.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? You skated around that part. So let's go there.
Did.
You did. You danced around that question pretty easily.
I think, well, I thought about this a lot in Vegas, right? And I think it's a feeling. For me, it starts here. It's a feeling. Like I'm confident in what I say, or like, and it's easier for me to relate it at work, right? Like I am confident in what I do. And I think that for me, it has to do with where my level of preparation is, what that looks like, and in my horse and in my roping, and me being present in the moment, just what's the term, staying in my own lanes and doing my own thing, disregardless of whatever else is going around me. So
right.
For me, it's right here. And that's the only way I can say it.
Right between the ears.
Right.
I mean, that's where confidence is right between the ears.
Right.
It is a mindset.
True. And I think positive mindset. And I think that goes back to the fact, and it all goes back to the fact you're either winning or learning.
Right. But the feeling's also between the ears.
It starts your brain, but then and your brain has to create that thought, right? And then it gets transferred from short-term to long-term memory, and every thought, every action is transferred with an emotion, right? And that, I think that right there is the key, right? I think, and what happens, we know when you do a motor pattern or do X, Y, or Z, and in short-term memory, when it is transferred to long-term memory, from hippocampus to whatever, there's that emotion piece of it. And then what happens when we drive all night or not prepared, or and don't have that good sleep, because that happens in sleep. And then I think sleep's a big piece of that we haven't even discovered yet. So obviously I've been finishing up my dysgraphia course, and I've been way deep into brain anatomy, but that's
well, and really thinking about that, I mean, think about what makes you confident. How many times in the last 10 times you've entered have you backed in there and beat them, and I mean, but you have to be smart enough to know if you draw the wrong calf. You just have to be smart enough to know that. But I think that gives you confidence, the more times you've done it in a row or whatever. So I guess that would be, like you're saying, memory and the feelings that go with it. So
for sure. Yeah. Like my calf that fell down last night, knowing that, I didn't watch my calf very well. I mean, I knew, and I've been working all winter on watching my cattle, not watching the score. Not watch my cattle, not watch my score. Well, I don't really know, because then my calf fell down and I ran over him. So I'm gonna put that one aside. So, but I think where I'm going with this is the fact of the people that we help, or the kids that we help. I think why it's so important is when you're in a competitive place, or even in the practice pen, having the positive emotions around, or positive mindset, however you want to say it, around all of this stuff is going to create better confidence for them when they get to the practice in competition, and not letting them go off the deep end, or we're trying to set them up, right? That's kind of my, and it's all swirling up here in my head, but that's where I'm going with it.
Would you say that you would try to, say if you're trying to help somebody write out a practice plan, would you focus on basics every single day, and then something new that you're trying to get to every now and then, or how would you strategize that?
It would all depend how good their left hand is, because I think their left hand is more important than their right hand at most points, and it really depends what kind of horse they're on too. But I would like, kind of like, if on the sled you're going to review, like on the sled where it's slowed down, you're going to rope a couple just to get everything going. And then say you wanted to work on, my thought this today is getting my rope, going faster, right? Or something like that. Then you could add that in on the sled, and then they get it good on the sled, and then you could add it in on live cattle. So bits and pieces, and still trying to end on a successful note. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah, I was just curious, like, say if you wanted to practice reaching, would you practice it every day, or would you intermittently practice, like, say maybe 2 times a week or once a week?
I never practice reaching, ever. But yes, like I would say you would come into this practice, say you're going to get to practice 3 times this week and you're going to go somewhere this weekend. I would practice it on Monday and see how it goes, and maybe run like 3 or 4. And like, I would use the term, like, say, instead of running up 1 in the middle, you're going to rope coming 2, right?
Correct.
That type of thing. I would probably said, actually, I'm going to say this again. If I was going to do that, I would rope 3 or 4 and try it on all of them. So I just
on Monday, and then
reevaluate. And if I was successful, I would try it again a little bit on Wednesday again to put it in my practice,
Okay.
And then, I don't know, anytime you learn. But I think that has to be done when you're going to practice something new, has to be done give yourself that 21 days at least to build new motor patterns before you try it anywhere. I think that's the kicker. Because you might go back, you're going to go backwards before you go forwards, more than likely.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Gina, as many sports as you've played too, one of the other things, like when I was coaching basketball, we didn't have kids just shoot 3-pointers and start warming up from there, right?
Right.
We've had them shoot lay-ins, and then they take a little step back, and they take a little step back, and so work your way, and you can incorporate it into a practice where run 1 or 2, where you like to run to your sweet spot, then back in the box with the intention of reaching a couple, and then finish on a positive note, run back up there and make that solid run so you have that muscle memory and it feels good, and then you leave the arena with that solid feeling. But you've got to expose yourself and miss a couple times, right, before you're going to expose yourself and make that consistent catch. So it's no different. I mean, from my way of thinking, you can either build on it, like Jennifer was saying, or you could start out with lay-ins, work your way back to the free throw line, work your way back to the 3-point line, and work your way back up. and finish on that same note that you started.
Mm-hmm.
Just a different way to look at it.
Right. But as long as you're ending each one on a positive note, I think that's the
Correct. Yeah.
The kicker.
And I think that's where the sled would come in as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I always told girls, like even saying the goat tie-in, because everybody wants to get quicker and quicker. You know, I always told some people, well, tie really, really fast one day, and then the next day go just as, it doesn't matter how fast you go, but do it perfectly. And so they don't get in that speed jam. And I just kind of always relate that back to roping, but I'm like, do you work on it? Do you work on your new tactics every day on how you want to get better? Or do you kind of go back and forth? And that's I was just kind of picking your guys' brain, see what you had to say about that.
I think all of the above. And I think for different people, it's going to be
Right. Different journey.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because some people are going to be able to be open to that and expose themselves and not feel feel negative leaving the arena that direction, where you're going to come back and realize that was a win because you got it out of your hand and you didn't ride up that one stride closer, right? But at the same time, some people are going to need to finish that practice on a positive note and see that rope go around that calf neck and make that good solid run. And so I think it just depends on that person and the mindset that they have when they leave the arena that day.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. For sure. Well, we're about to an hour, guys. I appreciate this. What other thoughts do you guys have before we wrap up?
So we all need to get in the same practice pin together. That would be fun.
That would be fun.
It looks like Women's Pro Rodeo Today is the new one for the finals this year. Coming on right now. Finals
Oh, the
number 1.
WPRA. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I just saw that coming on.
Somebody on the thing asked, can you list those 5 things again, please? I'm not sure what they were. I should have looked at the thing. So
The 5 ways to learn, maybe.
Oh, the 5 ways to learn.
Yes.
Like the
Auditory,
auditory and all that. Yeah.
auditory, visual,
Kinesthetic.
kinesthetic, eyes, ears, hands, movement, moving. Yeah. Maybe I'll list them on the website, on the Facebook page. There we go. I'll write them out a little better. Yeah. So, well, you could just come this weekend and you could rope too, Stacy, if you're going to come to Brad's.
That's out of my winter radius.
Come on.
Plus, if I wait 1 more week or 2 more weeks, there's going to be like 5 of them within an hour or 2 of my house.
Right? And then the sad part is they put the Friday night one at Badiola's with 1,000 added that same weekend.
Oh, they did.
Mm-hmm.